Severe thunderstorm watch.
Is that what you're in?
That's what I'm looking at. I'm not.
Oh, okay. This week on Dueling Review, we take a look at Mr. Miracle #1. From the team behind The Sheriff of Babylon and the Hugo Award-winning writer of Vision comes a unique take on one of Jack Kirby's most beloved new gods. Scott Free is the greatest escape artist that ever lived, so great that he escaped Granny Goodness's gruesome orphanage and the dangers of apocalypse to travel across galaxies and set up a new life on Earth with his wife, the former female Fury known as Big Barda. Using the stage alter ego of Mr. Miracle, he has made a career of himself showing off his acrobatic escape techniques. He even caught the attention of the Justice League, which counted him among its ranks. You might say Scott Free has everything. So why isn't it enough? Mr. Miracle has mastered every illusion, achieved every stunt, pulled off every trick, except one. He's never escaped death. Is it even possible? Our hero is going to have to kill himself if he wants to find out. I gotta say, this Mr. Miracle was pretty depressing. I'm not sure I liked it. I mean, I liked it, but I'm not sure I liked it.
Right. It's one of those stories, and these come up every once in a while, where the book is interesting and you want more of it, but not because it was,
somebody commits suicide in the first page. Right.
It's a challenging story. I feel like I've seen some takes on it that may be giving it, it's the whole new comic storytelling. It's okay. Well, maybe
so what are those takes that you've seen from other people? Because I mean, I've seen everyone say it's really, really good, but then to me, this is not. I mean, I like Mr. Miracle. I like the New Gods. I'm not sure that this is the depths of stuff Jack Kirby was going to. Maybe he was, but it doesn't feel like it to me. I mean, I've read the 4 volumes of the New God saga. And I've enjoyed Mr. Miracle in his past incarnations, and it's usually humorous and upbeat and sometimes a little intense. And I love the relationship between him and Barda, and it always seems to be good fun. This feels like it should not have been a DC book. It feels like it should be a Vertigo book, both in the art style and direction and the intensity of the story.
Or a new Young Animal book. Yeah,
Young Animal could also be it.
That is the biggest question that I have about this is when you get to the end of the story, your immediate thought is, what is going on? Yes. I think I know what's going on.
What do you think is going on? And I'll share some things that I think is going on.
I do not believe that any of the events in this issue after the point where we see Scott bleeding.
Oh, you think this is all
I think this is either in his head
or grease ending.
His mind. I think his mind is somehow connected to the source or the afterlife or whatever. Yeah. Because you keep seeing these kind of recurring themes and these fugue moments, and it just at random a panel that just says "Dark Side is."
Yeah, and so you're taking it. This is all in a death, like his he's dying, and this is his dying fantasy brain firing and telling all this stuff.
Well, I don't want to say that because, that's one of the biggest cliches ever. All this story is someone's dying dream.
Yeah.
But it really feels like this is, well, first of all, at one point he dreams or he goes on a talk show, which is hosted by Glorious Godfrey.
Right.
Who is one of Darkseid's minions. Mm-hmm. And he's explaining to Godfrey how he killed himself or tried to kill himself so that he could beat death and escape death. And Godfrey's like, did you really escape?
Yeah.
Did you really? Oh, we're going to commercial.
Right. So here's the thing. Here's my take on it. At one point, Scott's looking in Barda's eyes and he's like, no, your eyes are blue. And she's like, no, they're brown. They've always been brown. And then we get these dark side is. We get this weird moment that, some people, I'm sure, will read into, there were two footprints on the beach, and then there was one, and that's when a high father said, "That's when I was carrying you, Scott." Moments in here that's
kind of neat.
What? That's what?
That's kind of neat, actually. I love that whole scene.
Yeah, and then you get the thing about Oberon's dead, not dead, but the thing that gets really weird is when, right at the end, or they get that message that says that Darkseid has taken over. And he's solved the equation, and everything's coming together, and Darkseid has the ability to control people's minds. Mm-hmm. And Scott's like, hey, I don't want to go. And Barda starts punching him, telling him to stand up and get his mind together. And then as they're going into the boom tube, her eyes are blue again, which to me says, you're right, this is all in Scott's brain, but this is Darkseid controlling him.
Controlling reality.
And that's why these visual blips of Darkseid keeps popping up like a subliminal message in Scott's life. Or, if we're inside of his mind, suddenly he has these flashes of Darkseid is in his mind, right, so that he's starting to believe everything that Darkseid is feeding him. And you're right, Oberon probably isn't dead. There was probably never a discussion, or there may have been a discussion in some way as a last attempt for Highfather to try to communicate with Scott. But it kind of tells me that at the end, when Barda punches him and is telling him to get his crap together, that something has broken in Darkseid's control of him, and that's why her eyes suddenly turn back to blue.
Could be interesting. And you have to mention that, when she's punching him, it's exactly the same thing that Orion does earlier in the issue.
Right.
Orion literally shows up in their living room, punches him, knocks him down, and orders him to stand in the style of Granny Goodness. Mm-hmm. And of course, during that whole segment, Barda is like, only Granny can teach. Mm-hmm. It's another thing that it feels like it's some sort of mind control or indoctrination or some sort of not real scenario that we see going on.
Yeah, and so the other thing then that would tie into that is that in the Oberon segment, if you notice, Scott is all in color. The Thanagarian handcuffs are in color, but Oberon has this kind of like paper wash kind of all over him, where it's like tape and coffee stains and everything all over the panel, or anything involving Oberon and that stuff. Right. But
he's a ghost.
He's a ghost, but scroll back up to where Orion appears, and his helmet is kind of the same way. And in the background where he appears full body is kind of the same way, which makes you think that, oh, here is an influence from an outside source.
That is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, from the visual, everything about this book is really, really interesting, but the minute when you open up a book with someone bleeding out because they've slit their wrists on the floor, to me is something that I'm suddenly going, oh, this is going to be an uncomfortable story. And I'm not opposed to uncomfortable stories, because I think comic books should make you feel uncomfortable at times. This, to me, though, doesn't feel like a DC book. It feels like a Vertigo subject matter book. And that's my biggest kind of weirdness about this book. Otherwise, it's real fascinating, and I want to see where it goes, and I want to see if these things that you and I are talking about are really playing out. Like, hey, this really was a dream. This is Darkseid influencing his mind. Barda punching him and her eyes turning blue is a huge visual clue and not just a printing error on someone's part.
Right. The visuals in this issue, the effects and the treatments of the art are fascinating. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of really subtle work in here that is incredibly good at kind of drawing you into the story and not realizing at first what it is you're looking at. At one point, we see Scott sitting on the couch, just having an existential crisis.
Right.
And Mother Box is pinging, and behind him is the cover of Mr. Miracle #1 from 1971. Mm-hmm. And the first time I saw that, I'm like, oh, that's wait. And then, of course, my brain is starting to think, is that some sort of external reference too? Is this just, is it just a clever bit of a poster in his house, or are they telling something? Are we going back to the beginning?
Right. In that case, it also brings up a whole lot of questions, because where do the New Gods currently fit in this DC continuity? Because, before this whole rebirth thing, we weren't in the fourth world. We were in the fifth world, and the gods and all their stuff had come to pass. And, it got really weird and maybe not so good for people who are fans of the New God stuff. Are we resetting? Is this the fourth world stuff now? It certainly looks like the fourth world stuff. I mean, I don't know what's going on with a Bug.
Bug is a young animal title, which I think means that it's non-canonical to the DCU.
So, I mean, that's something that needs to be addressed. And you're right, the visuals get even more interesting when you look at the page, which you assume is Scott, because it's this little boy who is in class, and they're telling this story about, the teacher told everybody they could draw whatever they want, and some kids drew spaceships, some of them drew dinosaurs. Here's this little boy who said he drew God, and the teacher said, well, that's nice. No one knows what God knows what God looks like. And then the little boy says, yeah, until now. You can see that the T-shirt is red and yellow, and it's got the 2 yellow dots right where Mr. Miracle's costume would be. But then the other thing that's really weird, and this is what makes the art so good, is that there is tape, like clear cellophane tape, over the boy's eye in all 6 of those iterations, or 5 iterations of that boy in that panel, which is also telling you something subtly. And if that's what they're doing, if they're really pulling a big, I always complain about Grant Morrison in his stuff can be so infuriating until you read it all at once and then you see how everything's being built and put together. I kind of hope that's what they're doing here, is they're using every cool technique that they can to subtly let the audience know what's going on, so that you can read this on so many different levels. I really, really hope that that's what this is, because if it's not, then I'm going to be really disappointed.
Yeah. Well, this is a Tom King story.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely going to be something going on that we aren't seeing. And there's definitely going to be, a kind of a delving into the human condition and what it means to think and feel and be stuff. So I'm fine with that. I really think that, and even if this does turn out to be someone's dying dream, no story, no trope is necessarily bad. It just feels like I don't want to have to explain to somebody that that's what this is, because they're immediately going to think, oh, I've heard that 1,000 times.
No, I think he's just under a mind control.
1,000 times.
I think he's just under a mind control.
It's interesting in any case.
It really is.
I want to read more of this. This is a 12-issue mini or a 10-issue mini?
I don't remember. It's got to be 12, but this is a really good first issue. It is uncomfortable. There's a lot of subject matter in here, especially when most of the issue is dancing around the subject of his attempted suicide. And,
he did attempt suicide. He's defeating death. He's escaping death.
He's trying to escape death, right? And so, he's deflecting. Scott Free is deflecting. Barta doesn't know how to bring up the questions. Or Ryan is mad and angry, like some people would be if their friend attempted to commit suicide, and trying to straighten them out. Highfather is just like, hey, man, I'm always here with you, even if it means we have to, walk on the beach together. There's so much in here about the aspect of suicide, which is interesting, but also I think is going to be uncomfortable for a lot of people. But maybe that's just me and in my reading of it.
No, I think it's definitely there. But I think there's also, if you're in a place where you can approach this and really kind of feel it in the right ways, or, if the material can strike you in the right way, I feel like this is a book that has some really interesting stuff to say. I also think that it's very important on some level that the only panel the only page that doesn't contain a Dark Side Is panel is the panel with the page with Highfather.
Right.
Which
He's
makes
in that
me
protected
think that
place.
Maybe your theory about this is correct, and that's actually Highfather communicating with him.
I want to go back. I'm trying to look on the Orion pages. I guess they don't do it there, but in the Oberon pages, there's tape over Oberon's face too. And of course, Oberon is telling the same joke or story that opens the book. But it's just the visuals on this is really cool. And of course, it follows the 9-panel layout for most of the issue, which I think is also interesting. I like the 9-panel layout. I know some people really despise it. But for me, it really works. Providing that you break it up on often enough. So we get a double page splash followed by a single page followed by, the 9-panel grid for most of the issue until you get to the final couple of pages, where you then go back into a single black page that is just Dark Side Is. And then you get back into your final 9-panel grid, and it just kind of ends right there.
Yeah. I like the 9-panel grid as a storytelling technique because it feels like it conveys more information. And when you have that many panels, you can, when done correctly, actually feel like a lot more has happened in this book with 9 individual segments on each of the 20 pages than you would get in a book that may have, a different grid or 3s and 5s and 6s. But again, it's all in the execution, and the execution here of this grid is amazing. And
Yes.
I didn't notice the 9-panel grid until you mentioned it.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, I did, but I wasn't thinking, hey guys, 9-panel grid. Just like Watchmen. Watchmen was all 9-panel grid.
Well, and then again, there's probably some symmetry in here too, if you want to go back to things that are going on in the book. I mean, how many pages in? Let's see. You've got 1, 2, 3. Page 4 is the scot-free telling the God joke. And if we go back 1, 2, 3, 4 pages from the end is not the Oberon stuff. So, there's not a symmetry there, but I really like just the subliminalness of Darkseid is, and it starts to increase as the end of the book goes. It's just really cool. I really, again, I like this book. And I'm glad we talk about it, because I was really super uncomfortable after reading this book. But after going back and analyzing it with you and before the show started, it makes me feel better about the book. But I still think that if you're going in thinking that this is going to be scot-free, laughing it up and having grand adventures,
it's not the jammed him out as Mr. Miracle from the 90s.
Yeah, definitely not.
It is not.
Yeah, but I give it a thumbs up, though.
I do too, and this is different than a Grant Morrison take on the New Gods, but it is, again, something that takes what Kirby created from the New Gods and use it to kind of establish a different story, or to try and address something more than just a grand war in the heavens, which, don't get me wrong, that's a great story.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of the reason why the New Gods are around and why DC has made Darkseid the villain of everything, because he's Darkseid.
Yeah.
He's the biggest villain. We're just going to have him be around all the time.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I'm fine with that. Keep paying the Kirby family. And I'll be kind of fine with that. But
I guess I just wish that, with what's his name? Titan, Mad God Titan over there on Marvel. Thanos. Every time that he appears, it's always the Infinity Gems and the Infinity Gauntlet. And I think there's more to a villain than just being a one-dimensional, one-trick, I got to get the Infinity Gauntlet kind of villain. I mean, the whole Thanos miniseries where he was dead and came back and he had to basically fight his way back to the top, or whatever that was, that we reviewed a while ago. That was interesting. But it seems like every time Darkseid is around, it's always like, it's the anti-life equation. I'm obsessed with the anti-life equation. And I can understand that if you're super obsessed with something.
Right.
But I think you can have more to Darkseid than just constantly every appearance is anti-life, anti-life, anti-life. Because quite frankly, that anti-life equation and then everybody in the DC universe turning into zombies really kind of ruined anything interesting about Darkseid and the New Gods when whoever was in charge of that story arc a couple of years ago.
The Final Crisis story arc?
Yeah, the one where, Darkseid found the anti-life equation, and then he turned everybody into zombies, and there was like a whole portion of the planet that was just like dead zone, and you had, the heroes trying to combat them, and many of them were turning into... I really hated that arc.
That was Final Crisis, or part of Final Crisis.
Part of Final Crisis, yeah.
Yeah, but Final Crisis was a mess, so...
Yeah. So, I mean... give Darkseid a little something else to do.
Yeah, Darkseid can go and buy a new bathing suit.
Yes, he needs to. That one piece that he's been wearing since 1963 is getting a little rank.
Dude, Darkseid was created in 1971. Don't be that
He's been
guy.
Around since 1963.
No, he has not. Don't be that guy.
He wasn't born fully formed.
My granddad had the first Spider-Man from 1939. Don't be that guy.
Actually, there would have been a Spider-Man, but not the Marvel Spider-Man.
I'm hanging up now.
You know that Pulp Hero Spider-Man?
I remember the Spider.
Yeah.
I remember Alias the Spider, different Spider.
Yeah.
I remember the Spider Queen.
Yeah, see? All them spiders, the whole spider family.
Don't you do it.
So good book for you?
Absolutely. Yeah, this is really, really solid. This is probably my favorite take on Mr. Miracle. Ooh, gosh. I don't know. This may actually go back to the Justice League International stuff in the 80s.
Mm-hmm. And I do like that, even the first page where they've got the zipatone or the dots all over, the printing dots, kind of reflects back to that very first issue of Mr. Miracle that Kirby introduced us to him in.
It reminds us that these are just lines on paper.
Yeah,
man.
they really are. Anyway, coming out next week from Dark Horse Comics, we have Dead Inside trade paperback volume 1. There you go. Since following on this topic here,
It's called Don't Open Dead Inside.
Nope, it just said Dead Inside. We also have Neil Gaiman's American Gods Shadow number 6. That'll conclude that first arc for that series. Over at DC Comics, there's Aquaman number 27, Astro City number 46. And listeners, if you are not checking out Majorspoilers.com on a regular basis, you really should be, because every month, and this has been going on now for 2 years now. Matthew and Kurt Busiek sit down and they have an interview about the issue that has just come out. So, in a couple of weeks,
my close personal friend Kurt Busiek and I.
So in a couple of weeks, hopefully, I don't know how often after the book is released you get it up, but it's usually within a week or so.
It really does depend on Kurt's workload. Some days he'll get it to me immediately. Some days it takes a week or two. Once it took 6 weeks and he apologized, but
Yeah. So go over to Majorspoilers.com and check those out, because they're always fascinating reads and gives you a little bit more insight into what's going on in the issue and some other things. And I'm super happy that we're able to run that as often as we can. And I'm so glad that Kurt is open to doing that. Every month or so. So go check that out at Majorspoilers.com. It's called Inside Astro City.
He doesn't spoil things. He doesn't give away what's coming, but there are always little hints and allegations and things that a month or two down the line, you can go, that's what Kurt meant. That's what Kurt meant. If you go back, man, it's full of little Easter eggs and things that are now coming true. And I'm like, a year ago, Kurt said this, and that's what my close personal friend, Kurt Busiek, meant.
You never say that about me. You never go, my close personal friend, Steven Schleicher. I'm kind of offended.
I don't see why.
I'm kind of offended. Cave Carson has a Cybernetic Eye number 11, DC Comics Bombshells number 33, Green Arrow 29. There's a lot of books. I mean, so many books coming out from DC Comics next week. It's a big, long list, including Six Pack and Dog Welder Hard Traveling Heroes trade paperback. Welder. Yeah, he welds dogs to people's faces.
Yes.
That's why he's called Dog Welder.
Justice.
Yes. IDW Publishing. Isn't that a Grant? No, that's not a Grant Morrison. That's a Garth Ennis character.
That is a Garth Ennis character from Hitman. He's part of the Section 8.
Yeah, man.
And the only bad part about Dog Welder is the fact that you almost can't read a Dog Welder story without reading about Bueno Excelente, who is just nauseating.
IDW Publishing has 24 Legacy Rules of Engagement number 4. So if you're a big 24 fan and you want to know what happens outside of the TV show, which I don't think is ever coming back, comic books, IDW Publishing. Also, Dungeons and Dragons, Frost Giants Fury number 4.
Didn't we cover number 1 of that like a year ago?
Yeah, we did.
Maybe it's a bi-monthly.
Maybe, but to be honest, Matthew, the way Wizards of the Coast is releasing their games stuff, every quarter they release a new theme or a new story adventure. So, it started out with Tiamat's Revenge and then the Dragons something or other, and then it kept building and building and building. And I want to say 2 quarters ago, like in October, December, somewhere around there, that's when they released the Frost Giants Fury stuff. And now, and in September, they're releasing the new one, which is Tomb of Annihilation. And so in my mind, somebody's behind. Because my guess is they would have had Frost Giants Fury wrapped up.
Maybe they want to wrap up with the end of the arc of the story of the game.
Maybe.
And lead directly into the new arc. The dwarf lieutenant's woman.
Maybe. I don't know.
50
I do know
Shades of Elf.
I do know that Revolutionaries number 7 comes out next week, as does ROM number 12 and Time and Vine number 2. Over at Image Comics, they have Curse Words number 7, Rat Queens number 5, and Southern Bastards 17. Marvel Comics, a short list from Marvel next week. And of course, this is a preliminary list that we have. You'll want to check Majorspoilers.com Monday afternoons. That's when we put up the complete list, if Steven remembers. And then you can see everything that's there. But Marvel Comics has Deadpool 2099 trade paperback, Edge of Venomverse number 1. That's a second printing. That one must be popular.
People love that Venom.
Is that what they want? More Venom?
It's pronounced Venom.
All right. Invincible Iron Man number 10, Luke Cage number 4. And then, of course, for the 100th anniversary of Jack Kirby's birth, True Believers, Kirby 100th, Captain America number 1. You can get that for $1. And you can also get the Eternals number 1, the True Believers Kirby 100th anniversary tribute for $1. And you might also want to go pick up X-Men Blue number 9. In all the rest category, we have Amerikarate number 5, Attack on Titan Before the Fall graphic novel, Divinica number 2. I don't know what that is, but it doesn't have a bunch of variant covers.
Dave Inca, actually.
Okay.
His name is Dave, and he's an Incan.
Are you sure it's not
weatherman?
Divi Nika?
No.
Okay.
Because that would be foolish.
Grim Fairy Tales Tarot number 1, Infinite 7 number 6, Looker's Ember number 1. Do you want to guess at how many variant covers we have on this one?
Well, it's got 2 titles, so I'm going to say at least 6.
You're close.
Mm-hmm.
Multiply that times 3.
Good Lord, 18 covers?
18 covers.
There's a nude cover.
Well, so they've got the regular cover. They've got a GGA homage, GGA homage nude cover, a Luscious cover, Luscious nude, Red Hot nude, Sexy Spies nude, webcam bikini nude, webcam bikini topless.
Wait.
Workout nude,
how can it
rap
be a
and a rap nude
cover and a nude cover?
I don't know.
How can she be a nurse if she's not wearing any clothes? I mean, these are the questions you have to ask yourself.
Misfit City number 4 and Secret Weapons number 3, and then don't forget Warhammer 40K Dawn of War 3 number 2.
Dawn of War. Is that the same Dawn from Dawn of Justice? Because she's busy.
She's very busy. This one's DON.
Oh, that's it's Don Wells from Gilligan's Island.
That's what it is. Next week on Dueling Review,
Future Quest presents number 1, written by Jeff Parker, art by Ariel Olivetti. After the thrilling events of Future Quest, a new age of adventure begins. First up, Space Ghost! And his young wards Jen and Jace team up with the Herculoids to rebuild the mighty Space Force. Will they rise again to become defenders of the galaxy? Or is something lurking in the shadows ready to stop them for good?
You can show your support for this show and everything we do at Major Spoilers by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Major Spoilers. If you got something out of this show, you found some little bit of information, humor, whatever, consider giving a little bit back. Sign up for just maybe even $1 a month or $2 a month. The more you spend, the more you get back from us. Your contribution, though, does keep this show going. It pays for our growing costs, and it gives us the motivation to produce more for you each and every week. So thank you so much for checking out Dueling Review, and we will talk with you next time when you'll hear Matthew say,
if every pork chop was perfect, we wouldn't play hopscotch.
This podcast is copyright 2017 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.